Here's what some people are saying about the Projection Booth podcast.
The Projection Booth is single-handedly the greatest film podcast you could ever listen to or could possibly want.
Top notch. 5 stars. This has quickly become one of my favorite film-related podcasts. Always interesting.
A completely unpretentious yet fully comprehensive look at films from all genres.
The Projection Booth podcast, with new episodes available every week at projectionboothpodcast.com.
You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those nerds! Nerds! Nerds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the REVIEWcast podcast. With me is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Wait a minute. You guys aren't the real Avengers. I could tell. Hulk gives it away.
Also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife Dork.
I'm just looking for something to stick up somebody. I'm not looking to shoot them back in time.
Yes! And also joining us is Brad Gullickson, mouth Dork.
When I say penis, you say Parker. Penis.
Parker.
Penis.
Parker.
And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork. Hey, are you that spider guy from YouTube?
Yeah, call me Spider-Man.
Okay, Spider-Man, do a flip. Yeah! And welcome to the REVIEWcast podcast reviewcast for Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yay!
Yay!
Spoiler alert, it's so awesome.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are, 16 films?
16
films deep in the MCU.
Oh, wow.
And the latest installment is the John Watts directed Spider-Man Homecoming. So, if you may well know, because of if you've seen Captain America Civil War, there was this miraculous alignment of the stars and planets where Marvel Studios and Sony were able to come to an agreement that have Spider-Man in the MCU. He was a standout character in Captain America Civil War. And that leads us to today with, again, the John Watts directed standalone Spider-Man film, Spider-Man Homecoming. John Watts is a favorite here at REVIEWcast in that we love his film Cop Car, starring Kevin Bacon. And when we spoke about that, we talked about our excitement for his handling of this particular character in this property. So now it seemed like only yesterday where it was just announced and we had to wait like so long for this movie to come out. And now I'm at the point where I've seen it 4 times already. So let's talk about this film that, from my understanding, has been getting pretty good reviews. Even prior to its public release, its commercial release, the advance buzz was good for Homecoming.
I think you're hard-pressed to find somebody who did not like this movie on some level or another.
Have you seen any negative reviews yet?
I saw one.
Just one?
What?
Yeah.
That's pretty
Somebody
good.
that I really respect, too.
Damn.
Well,
Let's call him out on this cast, too.
Roll him into traffic.
Oh, no. I mean,
guess
I
won't
respect
press
his his opinion, but it was Robert Meyer Burnett.
Oh, okay.
Damn. I just saw a headline that the first weekend box office is like 116 million. So
Yeah, estimated.
Let's clean it up.
You can't throw a rock and not hit a person who hasn't seen this movie twice, unless you throw the rock at Brian, because he's seen the movie only once.
Yeah.
And,
But I would never
the
throw a rock at
only
Brian.
opinion that truly matters is the Itmod
Yep.
opinion.
All right, so let's get into Spider-Man Homecoming. Brad, did you have high expectations going into it, or were you of the ilk of another Spider-Man film? Okay, we just had a different one, a reboot, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
The Sony Amazing Spider-Mans, the Mark Webb films,
Right.
I really detest.
Have you always had that standpoint?
I've always been disappointed in him. I think the
Right.
first film has elements in it that I like. I think Andrew Garfield is decent.
Yeah.
I think the ending is terrible, and there's a lot of awkward handling of tone in the first Amazing Spider-Man. And I think the second Amazing Spider-Man, from the moment I saw it, was hot garbage.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame because, one of my favorite Comic-Con moments
my goodness.
is,
just thinking about it,
the second year or the third year that we went, we were in the Hall H and we were sitting next to the microphone where people were going up and asking questions, and this kid in a Spider-Man costume got up there and started talking about how much he loves Spider-Man, and he whipped his mask off, and it was Andrew Garfield, and it had to be one of the sweetest moments I've ever experienced at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And I just admired his passion for the character, and I felt akin to him in that Comic-Con moment. But sadly, those movies I really did not like, and this last one in particular I abhorred. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies were important to me, at least 1 and 2 in their time, but as I've grown with those films, I've thought less and less of those experiences.
Yeah.
So, when I heard that the MCU would get Parker or Spider-Man into Civil War, I thought, well, that's interesting, but I was concerned. But then all that worry went away with Civil War.
Right.
I mean, that might be the highlight of the film, the Queen's section and how Tom Holland plays Spider-Man at the airport during that fight. It's that is very much the comic book Spider-Man. And what we get here in Homecoming is the Spider-Man, or at least the closest to the Spider-Man that I read in, Brian Michael Bendis's version, or even the classic, Lee Ditko stuff.
Right.
That kid who can't believe the abilities he has and how he has to mask that power to his friends and family, and how he but still be propelled by the drive to do something with his gift because of what happened with Uncle Ben.
Right.
And, the greatest relief in this movie is, Kevin Feige and everyone involved in this film, John Watts, the screenwriters, probably even Amy Pascal at this point, knows that we don't need to see that spider again. We don't need to go through the Uncle Ben origin again. We don't need to see him wrestling. We know that already. So this is just right into a new adventure.
Yeah. There's not a sense of hand-holding here. I think that for me it felt like they respected Spider-Man's, the character. They respected his popularity. They understood that the world knows who Peter Parker is, how he got to be that way, who Uncle Ben is as a character. And
just starting at the beginning of this movie, when we have the Giacchino score come in and they're doing the cartoon credits over the Marvel logo, you get that rush of enthusiasm. And it starts off in the aftermath of the Avengers Chitauri War in New York. And we meet Adrian Toomes, is played by Michael Keaton. He's staring at a child's drawing of the Avengers battling below the wormhole.
Let's just say right now and establish that as far as the Disco Dork is concerned, Michael Keaton is so great.
Absolutely.
In this role.
And I love what is done with Toomes in this role, because in Spider-Man, he can kind of be kind of a fluff, laughable character.
He's not universe.
He's not very scary looking. He's like bald and he's like green, and he's
not exactly Green Goblin.
Yeah, right. But I think the way that they integrated his story and gave him a perspective that was really sympathetic was really cool.
Yeah. So he has a contract with the city. He's cleaning up the rubble, the mess, and he's going to make a lot of money because of this disaster. But then in comes Damage Control, which is a thing from the comic books. They have partnered up with S.H.I.E.L.D. and Tony Stark, and they are the ones who are going to tidy up and clean up this mess, and of course also secure the Chitauri alien technology. And Toomes is getting screwed out of a lot of money. And what I love is there's two things at the start of this film. Michael Keaton looking at that drawing and talking to the tinkerer, his like right-hand tech buddy, and saying that, you know, when I was a kid, I drew cowboys and Indians, and, you know, he has this look. And, of course, you know, the tinkerer says, like, oh, we call them Native Americans now. And but it's the film saying that, you know, the Westerns have gone by. Yeah, this is I
picked up on
a
that
theme that has been spoken about a lot in, you know, the franchise conversation.
Yeah, in this modern era.
That the superhero genre is what the Western genre was. So I loved that nod.
Yeah.
I also think that that's kind of establishing a level of like envy or at least awareness of what the new hero is.
And frustration.
Because we know that he has a daughter, and the daughter would not be doing this drawing if she didn't have a certain amount of hero worship for the Avengers. And so him seeing that admiration and wanting to become a hero in his own right and create his own character is set up very well. And it's something that pays off in the second watch. Because the first watch, you're like, where did this drawing come from?
And also his ability to not be resistant to change.
Right.
As some not being get off my lawn and, you know, it should be the way it was, and I'm gonna make sure things stay the same. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be a symbol for the past and how it was. But him saying to his crew, you know, times are changing, and it's time we change with them.
And what I love from a filmmaking standpoint is you see that they have snuck away some alien technology, and there's an opportunity here to make some money.
Yeah.
Cut to 1 year later, and they're playing the Rolling Stones' Can't You Hear Me Knocking, which is the Ted Demi Blow opening. And you suddenly see, you get the character of Toombs in that song. You know, he is a guy who is going to do whatever it takes to find stability for him and his family through nefarious means.
I also think that he has a sense of righteousness and justice in what he's doing, because him being a blue collar worker and being a contractor, and the idea of, you know, these superheroes coming in and wrecking the city, this created an enormous opportunity for him to care for his family, to care for his crew. And then with the Department of Damage Controls coming in, which is owned by Tony Stark, that livelihood that he feels is rightfully his is snatched out from under him. So he feels entitled in a way. He feels a little like he's robbing from the rich. You know, the idea of it's rigged. They get to bust up the city and they get to profit from fixing it.
And his viewpoint echoes a sentiment of our current society, in that he mentions that, you know, when he's jumping ahead in the film, he says, well, Peter, you and I are the same. He's like, those people up there, like you said, Brett, the 1%, they don't care about us. They send us to go fight their wars. And yet, you know, when we come home, we can't get taken care of, basically. You know, we just get forgotten about. They don't care about us. And that's a sentiment that is echoed in our society with, you know, people having their criticisms and issues with the VA. Like, veterans go over and serve the country, and then when they come back, they're forgotten about. They get subpar health care, or the people in the workforce who get taxed and then can't get health care and have all these things going on where it feels like the people in power don't care about the people who work to, you know, sustain that power. And so I think that in that way, like you mentioned earlier, Lisa, it makes Toombs a sympathetic and a relatable character.
Right.
And I like that.
And it's the idea of, okay, well, he's becoming an Avenger in his own right for his own means and message.
Right. And so, so we have that opening where we establish Toombs, and then we get
Toombs and his crew.
Yes.
So you also are introduced in that moment to, Shocker number 1, played by Logan Marshall Green from
The Invitation.
The Invitation.
He's our friend.
Looking like Tom Hardy, stunt double.
He does a little bit.
He really
I got
does.
that too.
Yeah.
He looks like a like if you took Tom Hardy and you put him through a rock tumbler.
And so the movie does this mashup of characters where, he's the first one to don like the Shocker gauntlet, but he's playing Jackson Bryce, who is in the comic books Montana, one of Hammerhead's gang members, and that he's kind of the guy who is itching to be top dog, right? Yeah. He's the Ice Cube to his Ice Tea, to reference the Trespass cast that's coming up soon. And he has an antagonistic relationship with Toombs, and then you have Bokeem Woodbine, who's playing Herman Schultz, who will eventually get that gauntlet and become Shocker number 2.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, there's the Tinkerer. So just in this opening sequence for comic book fanboys, it's going all in on the Spider-Man mythology.
Even going so far as to giving Shocker number 1 the color palette, like the semi outfit of the Shocker, like his sleeves being yellow and having that cross-hatched look.
And for some reason, when Bokeem Woodbine gets the gauntlet later, he also has like the sleeves,
jacket.
Even though Shocker number 1 got disintegrated.
It's a different jacket. The sleeves are like 3/4 length up, going from the wrist to the bicep area.
I guess
and then it's denim.
You need that particular type of pattern to
wield the gauntlet.
It really makes the electricity pop to have that yellow there.
It does. But I respect John Watts saying, hey, this is who this character, this is what his name is. We took it from this comic book inspiration, and so we'll give you some visual cue into that. So then after the introduction of Toombs and his crew and his motivation to set things in motion, then we get the Marvel Studios logo, which is awesome. And then we have a film by Peter Parker title card on the screen.
So good.
And we also get the Giacchino Spider-Man theme, which I think is so great. It gives, because it's considered kind of like a fun, like you can't hear the melody without thinking the words, Spider-Man, but it's treated with such gravitas. And I also like the way that he smoothed out the dotted rhythms and turned them into triplets. So instead of being da-da-da, 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 it's da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just so cool.
Epic.
It's it's the Marvel approach. It's saying, we're nerdy, but it's cool.
And we love what we do and what we've done.
And what we're referencing.
There's a respect to the history of it.
Yeah. And so I love the use of the triplets.
So 5 minutes into this movie, I am all in.
Yeah.
So I'm all in. When the title card comes up, a film by Peter Parker, we cut to a video being shot and narrated on a cell phone of Peter, and he's in the back of a car. Happy Hogan's driving, and we see that he's on his way to the airport. They get on a private plane.
I'm going to Berlin. I don't know why.
Yeah, and then they land in Berlin, and they're taken to the hotel room. Peter's given his own room, and he's told once he gets to the room, "What are you doing? Change into your costume." He puts his makeshift costume on. Happy comes in. What are you wearing? Where's the costume in the briefcase? He opens the briefcase. He sees the costume, the Spider-Man costume that Tony's made for him. He freaks out. Then we cut to his vantage point at the airport in the events of Civil War at the airport scene. So a film by Peter Parker comes up. Tom Holland as Peter Parker is shown there. I was sold from that whole home video montage moment. Just his excitement, his joy, his enthusiasm. I literally, and I kept thinking about this, I literally was grinning the whole time. Like for the first 20, 30 minutes of that film, my cheek muscles started to hurt because I was grinning so hard the whole time. And it was all because of Tom Holland and how he's portraying Peter as a teenager who's never been on a plane before, let alone, gone over to Berlin to fight a giant man and, seeing Captain America and friggin' who's this new guy, Black Panther, standing over there? Like, his joy and wonderment in that whole, like, he sold it so well.
And he's expressing it in a very current and millennial way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, even knowing that he's not going to be able to tweet it or put it on his YouTube, but the fact that he has to document everything is, I think, it's the perfect update of this character who would do that if he had it available to him in the 90s comic.
Yeah. It felt honest. Yeah. Brian's here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yay! Welcome, Brian. Thank you for joining us. He just walked in, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I did. That my quote was done by someone
pre-recorded.
else.
Yeah.
But no, it felt authentic. He like his exuberance. You really feel that he feels like a 15-year-old kid, and you really get that, and that's attributed to how that scene is played out and with the how Tom Holland performs that scene as well. But what I really just loved about it was, just like I said, just being able to, like you said, see it from his vantage point, and just to see that exuberance of him and the excitement of Tom Holland as Spider-Man. It's just a new rendition from like how we got from Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire. Because like you said, Brad, I rewatched Spider-Man 2 because I just don't understand like why people hail that as the best Spider-Man movie and like one of the best comic book movies. So I was like, let me go back and rewatch this movie. It doesn't work for me now.
It was necessary at the time.
At the time.
It was revelatory at the time.
So I don't know why people still hold that movie in such high regard.
They should not.
But another thing that I really like about that scene, I just got my point back, was the fact that it also answers that question to a lot of the criticisms that we as fans had, when we saw Civil War. It was like, who recorded this footage? We saw like in the trailer, like some of the shots of Ant-Man. It was like, okay, who was recording, during this battle? Well, it was Peter Parker recording it. And I like how they tie all that in to answer those questions that we have as well. So I thought it was just really smart how John Watts and everybody tied all that together.
And I think it was also a really fun setup for Happy and
so
Peter's relationship,
I
because
love Happy.
Because the development, Happy in this film really comes to his own.
Yeah.
The fact that he has been kind of ladder climbing throughout his relationship with Tony Stark, and that Tony Stark doesn't ever just give anything to Happy. He makes, if Happy comes to him and says, "Well, I want to be the whatever it's called, assets manager," then he's like, okay, well, I'll give you Peter Parker, and if Peter Parker goes well, I'll up your responsibility. So those stakes are set up for Happy in how tense he is and how self-conscious he is about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it would show that the level of respect he has for Happy is the same that he would have for Peter, because he does Peter the same way. Like, Peter, you have to earn this suit. I thought I could entrust you with it. You're showing me that you can't, so I'm going to take it from you. And so if you're going to become, quote unquote, asset manager, you have to earn this suit back.
Right.
And so he does it. He does the same thing. So it's not like he's just showing tough love or just being that way towards Happy or just being that way towards Peter. That's a thing that a work ethic or an ethic that Tony would have, period, that's unique to him, and he would treat everybody in that way. So I like that, because it's fleshing out Happy's character in the MCU, but it's still giving us character about Tony and how he is as a person, as a leader, and as a supervisor or boss or whatever. So we basically get what was Peter doing up until the events of his introduction into Civil War, and then we pick up, the plane landing upon his return back to Queens in New York. And that's where we had the scene where Tony says, "Hey, all right, you get to keep the suit. Don't do anything I would do. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And, we'll call you." And so this...
One thing, too, about that before we move on is watching the trailers leading up for Spider-Man, there was that concern of, are we seeing all of the good jokes in the trailer?
Oh, man.
And I love that every joke that was in the trailer had a tag in the film that elevated that joke. So, for example, when he's getting out of the car, the joke that we got in the trailer was, this isn't a hug, right? I'm just getting the door. But then the tag in the film is, we're not there yet, which makes the joke even funnier. So I I was struck by that on my first watch.
And there's some stuff that's not even in the film that was in the trailer, like Brian's quote, like, hey, Hulk gives it away. Like, that line is not in that moment, which I appreciate.
I always find that strange, though, in a film where they use things that aren't, I mean, I guess you're making the trailer ahead of time. But
So we have this kid, this 15-year-old kid who just had this extraordinary circumstance and was a part of it. Firstly, he's an extraordinary kid in of his own right in that he has superpowers and he's the Spider-Man. Then he gets recruited by the Avengers to go take part in this epic battle in Berlin. Then he's dropped off and told, all right, go back to school and lay low.
You really get the impression from Tony Stark that he only needed him in that moment. You know, he just needed somebody else to level the playing field on that airway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when he was done with that moment, he was done with that kid.
Well, yes and no. A part of me thinks that he still has plans for.
Yeah, but
why would he give him that suit?
Well, no. Here's the thing: he gave him that suit because he needed him in that moment, and then when he drops him back home, I'm sure he's like, "Hey, I want this kid to develop into something, but I want it to all happen on my time. I don't want it to happen on what this kid needs or what that kid wants." He's going to develop into the dude that I want him to be, the hero I want him to be, when I want him to be it.
Hence, the babysitter protocol. What was it called?
Yeah, the training wheels program, the baby monitor program.
Because I'm thinking, why would he give him that responsibility to keep that suit?
I think that suit was a way for him to monitor Peter without letting Peter know, like, I'm watching you just to see what he was going to do.
I think
or to be that bothered.
Yeah.
Also, he doesn't want Peter biting off more than he can chew. So, keeping it contained to the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man keeps him safe while he develops his skills.
Yeah. So now that Peter's back home from his adventure, life is supposed to return to normal.
Go back to school.
He has to go back to school. And that's when we are introduced to Ned. Peter's best friend.
I love Ned.
Who basically steals the show. Ned is great. Ned gives a different, like how Peter's perspective was given to us for the events of Civil War. Ned gives a human perspective to that Peter seems to lack in that. So there's a scene I think it's in the trailer, but it happens in the film where I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Well, Ned sees the aftermath of the damage to the bodega. And Ned goes, dude, you were in that? And Peter goes, yeah. He said, you could have died. And so Ned is always telling Peter, he would echo a similar sentiment when, Peter's like, Tony Stark's always treating me like a kid. Like, Ned is reminding Peter, like, well, you are a kid. You're in situations that you could not be here right now. You could have died. That looks horrible. And so I like that Ned is someone who reminds me as an audience member, because I can forget, because Peter is this dude with superhuman power and superhuman strength, and he does all these adventures. But Ned reminds me that, like, at the end of the day, he's still a 15-year-old kid.
So I like how the film handles the with great power comes great responsibility idea without repeating the Uncle Ben tragedy, right?
Yeah.
That you have this kid with power beyond his mental level or his maturity anyway.
Yeah.
And there's that scene when he sees the bank robbers, and here's his moment. He's just going to throw himself into it. He's going to take care of those dudes, and he's going to be out.
Yeah.
But in the struggle of that fight, that causes a chain reaction in which those high-tech weapons that they got from the Vulture's crew erupt and destroy his favorite sandwich shop in Queens and nearly, kill the owner and his cat.
Yeah.
And that is an Uncle Ben moment. That is another reminder for Peter Parker that you are entering a world that you may not be ready for.
And I think that's a theme that runs throughout the movie, not just in that scene, but I think also in the ferry scene as well.
Toomes says something that mirrors what you just said.
So I think throughout the movie, he's learning that lesson that with great ability comes great responsibility. I think
great power.
Great power, yeah.
It's got to be those words.
Great power. Yeah, but I think that's a running theme throughout the entire film that he's learning, and he's going to continue to learn, because Feige said that this is an arc, a 5-film arc that he wants, and I think part of that is Peter learning that responsibility.
And making mistakes. Like, he makes a lot of mistakes
he does.
in terms of not just the ferry, but, essentially the Washington Monument was his fault too.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about we're at school now. We not only do we meet Ned, we meet Liz, we meet Michelle, and we meet Flash.
We meet Betty Brant, played by what's her name from the Nice Guys.
Rice.
Mm-hmm. So Lisa, talk about that in the high school setting and how John Watts handles this new environment for us in Homecoming.
I think I love the fact that this is a mix of Ultimate Spider-Man high schools, because it is Peter Parker, Liz is there, Flash is there, but like Miles Morales, who is the next Ultimate Spider-Man, he's at a magnet school. So a magnet school for science.
And Ned's playing Gonky.
And Ned is essentially Gonky from Miles Morales' best friend. So, like, even though... Like, so he's not as big a dweeb as the original Peter Parker. His knowledge has some cachet. The fact that he is a science-minded kid does not make him like a total dweeb like the original Peter Parker.
This high school is like cherry-picking a lot of the elements from the comic books,
both.
which is what the MCU brand has been doing from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I like that he still has that level of high school insecurity, and he and I almost called him Gonky. He and Ned they're still on the bottom of the totem pole of their nerd group. So, he may be on I keep calling it, what is their little club called? It's like at Oakton we had something called It's Academic, where they do the game show.
Decathletes or whatever.
Oh, the decathlon or the mental decathlon or something.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Like, so, yeah.
Debate team.
The cool girl is on, it's not a debate team because they're doing trivia.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, they're little science decathletes or whatever. Mm-hmm. The fact that, like, his cool chick is in science and she's into going to college and making something of herself and this opportunity, but she's still way too pretty for Peter Parker in theory.
Yeah. And too old.
And too old, because she's a senior. So, I don't know. It's fun. I like that aspect of this film.
It's very much a high school film.
I also like that they're still keeping some characters, playing some cards close to the vest, because we don't have a Mary Jane, we don't have a Harry Osborn,
we don't have a Gwen Stacy.
We don't have a Gwen Stacy.
The Liz in this is very much the Gwen Stacy character. The Liz in the comics is kind of a persnickety individual,
right? But Gwen Stacy has a cop dad. And I think Gwen Stacy, at least in the Ultimate Spider-Man, Brian Michael Bendis is a little bit more punky. So I look forward to the interpretation of her in the upcoming films. Yeah. But like as you're walking through the school and you're meeting these familiar characters, you know that these other people are going to be coming to the school. Yeah.
And so then we have Peter going about his day in school, trying to focus, but also watching YouTube clips of his exploits that have been caught by people in the public, sneaking off into science class, making more web shooter solution. But he's always constantly looking back at the clock. He's waiting for release time because the first thing he does after stopping off at his favorite bodega for his
smushed sandwich,
he heads to the alley to change clothes, to put on his Spider-Man costume to go do some neighborhood heroing.
And he does his, friendly neighborhood heroing to the Ramones Blitzkrieg Bop.
So fun.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah. So talk about that sequence and, getting to see Peter Parker be, like the hero of the neighborhood. Well, I firstly want to say that the moment that just added to the charm of Tom Holland's Peter Parker that I really liked and enjoyed was when he does stop off in that bodega to speak with the owner guy, and you just see how, for me, the biggest takeaway was Peter's a good kid. Mm-hmm. He's a good kid. The neighborhood people see it. the owner there, has a very good rapport and a familiar rapport with Peter. He makes a comment about his Aunt May. Peter catches him and speaks Spanish and asks him about his daughter. So they have that exchange. But just seeing that exchange, seeing Peter go over and say hi to Murphy the cat, and then the guy saying how's school, Peter's like, it's okay, I have better things to do. And the guy says, stay in school, Peter. You don't want to end up like me. Peter looking around and saying, like, this is cool. And for me, that spoke that Peter is someone who, he's not looking for anything big or extravagant. He would be content and happy with, something on this level. Like, he sees this guy and, he sees something cool like that this guy has. And so Peter's I don't know. He just was a very relatable and, again, a likable and a good kid.
And also very secure. Like, the fact that he can speak so comfortably to an adult as a 15-year-old kid is actually pretty cool. And I think a sign of his intelligence, that Peter Parker is, even before he was Spider-Man, was an exceptional kid.
Yeah, and him being at that school, I like it. It strikes me as that's what I thought too, Lisa, is he's an exceptional kid without the radioactive spider bite, without any of the exploits that he goes with the Avengers in Berlin or whatever. Without any of that, he's just he has an exceptional mind. And so,
and a confidence. He's confident in it,
Well, that confidence comes with the spider bite.
You don't think that?
I mean, we don't know this version, but that's traditionally how the story is told.
Also, being raised by his aunt, by his aunt and uncle, as an only child, would also lend him to be comfortable with adults.
All right, I want to talk
just
about
like you. You're comfortable with adults.
Yeah, but
you are also
it's the spider bite. I mean, the spider bite gives him confidence,
right?
He, that's what brings him out of his shell.
Right.
I want to talk about Aunt May because Marissa Tomei is wonderful as that character. But before I do that, I guess I want to segue into it. Her character in that after he has his day of doing neighborhood.
But can we just talk about that scene though?
Yeah.
That scene is so great and is so perfectly Spider-Man. He stops that guy from stealing the bike, but he doesn't know whose bike that belongs to, so he leaves a note saying like, "Hey, don't steal this bike."
The car thief, the quote unquote car thief.
He sees what he thinks is a theft happening, and again, this is a tiny moment. It's a microcosm moment of the greater story here, but he doesn't have the context for everything that's going on, so he goes to stop that car thief, and it's just a guy trying to get back into his car because he's locked his keys in.
And like Lisa says, he makes mistakes, and we see that.
And one of my favorite moments is he's on the sidewalk helping a woman with directions.
Yeah. Good kid.
And then from your quote, Darren, you get the impression that Spider-Man in Queens, through YouTube, through the news, is becoming an iconic figure. And the hot dog stand guy is so excited to see the Spider-Man. Do a flip, kid.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about
that.
Excuse me. That's what I love about those moments with Spider-Man and with Peter Parker at the bodega is the fact that we don't just really get to see him, but we get to, as an audience member, we get to know more about the people in his neighborhood and the neighborhood that surrounds him that he lives in. So it really just familiarizes us with, the neighborhood that he grew up in, the people there, and for us to really kind of get attached to him being like this kid from Queens.
And so if you go back and you look at the Mark Webb films and the Sam Raimi films,
exactly,
this Peter Parker you have not seen.
Yeah.
That Blitzkrieg Bop montage, that is the very essence of the character in a series of 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so at the end of that montage concludes with Peter sneaking back into his room, which is, I think it was my second or third time watching it. I'm thinking about the effects shot of him climbing in that window along the ceiling. And I'm like, okay, is it a reverse camera angle? But I'm looking at his hair, and his hair is being affected by gravity. So he truly is upside down. But then he goes from hanging on the ceiling to just dropping down. So I'm like, how do they have cables on him? How do they do that? That's badass.
One of my favorite moments of depicting his ability is when he's crawling through the window on top. He closes the window with his foot.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God. Like that was as exciting as it got for me.
Yep.
Because he's sticky.
Mm-hmm. And so he drops down off the ceiling. He closes the door. He successfully snuck into his room without alerting Aunt May. But then something that I love was I talk about the Flash and TV show and how no one knows who Barry Allen is. He can't tell anybody, and the people closest to him, they're gonna know anyway. So just freaking tell them. And I love that Spider-Man: Homecoming, just right out the gate in the first act, allows Ned in on this wonderful secret.
Oh, you have to, yeah.
But it's the most stressful. His reaction is so stressful to me because he drops that freaking Lego Death Star and it just smashes into a million pieces. Oh my goodness! But that moment is so great. Let's talk about that.
And Ned's reaction to it is so sweet. He is on board right away, even though he does have, and as the story unfolds, he has his trepidations about it, but he is 100% in, and he's ready to be the man at the desk. The guy in the chair. That's what it's called. The guy in the chair. I also love the fact that when Aunt May catches Ned and Peter together, and Peter has no clothes on, she is not bothered.
Yeah.
She's
or
like,
surprised.
You do you. No pants party.
And so I said I wanted to get to this scene to segue into Aunt May because I want to talk about Marissa Tomei as that character because that scene segues to her and Peter having dinner at the Thai restaurant.
I love you.
So let's talk about Marissa Tomei as that character. Like, what are your thoughts on her casting and being that young or being a younger interpretation of what we've got cinematically from her?
I mean, that was never an issue. I find it hilarious that anybody would have a problem with Marissa Tomei as Aunt May.
Right.
I mean, we saw Civil War. She was perfect in like the 2 seconds that she was in Civil War. And, that's only explored further here. That dinner sequence, where she's teasing Peter, about the larb because he is so locked into his own brain and she needs to tease Peter out and to have an actual conversation with your aunt because at this point this is all she has in life right now is his well-being. I found multiple times in their interactions getting choked up because of everything that was not being said in this film. And the larb, and there's jokes about how beautiful she is, and the guy brings the sticky rice pudding, gives her a wink, and I like all that stuff, but she's a perfect fit for this character. She doesn't need to have gray hair and a prune face.
Yeah, because Aunt May, when in the comic books or whatever, she wasn't born old. At some point, she was this age.
Well, in the comic book, she was born old. 1967, Aunt May was ancient.
But what I'm saying is that character, before the first panel she was in, like she grew up to be that age at some, you know what I'm saying? But so I didn't have a problem with it. I just like Marissa Tomei's portrayal and the warmth in that character.
The warmth.
I really like that. What are your thoughts about that character, Lisa?
Oh, I agree totally with what you're saying because I in the Ultimate Spider-Man, she was like an auntie with a bun. She
was a younger, hipper, cooler aunt. Uncle Ben was younger. He had a ponytail, man.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that the fact that she treats Peter a little bit more like a peer but she still understands where he's coming from as a high schooler from an I've been there kind of perspective, I think adds to his maturity and adds to his story.
But the film also gives her moments to parent.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Peter knows his boundaries with her too. It's like they're not like, she's not trying to be his friend, even though she's trying to connect with him. But he knows because just the simple fact of the way you said in Civil War, he's like, I don't want her to know because she'll freak out.
And he doesn't want to upset her because she's been through a lot.
Exactly.
After all she's been through, right?
Yeah.
Or put her in danger.
Yep.
Right, of course.
And so the following scene is
then we get to go to gym class.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is my there's the foot that as far as like subtle awesome Spider-Man moments, that's like number one, right? my number 2 is in that gym class after we have, oh my God, okay, the Captain America moment with Hannibal Buress as the coach.
Yeah.
And he's playing this, this phys ed video, which is kind of like the videos I used to watch of Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was like with George H.W. Bush as
the presidential fitness
expert, guru. And here now, Captain America, that's what he's doing. That's what Captain America would do. That would be his half-ass attempt to connect with youth and do good on the school level.
Just like how he did in the first Avenger, like those USO shows.
Right, absolutely.
Same way, yeah.
But the best is, because this film is like right after Civil War, this video was probably made, somewhere around pre-Age of Ultron. Because I think the suit he's wearing in the video is Avengers 1, right?
Yeah.
So it's like Avengers 1 era Captain America doing this. And Hannibal Buress is like, look, I'm required to play these videos, but I think he's a war criminal.
I'm pretty sure he's a war criminal right now, which I thought was so funny.
Great
so funny.
MCU world building going on there.
There is.
And so, but my second favorite subtle Spidey moment is, I keep wanting to say Gonky. Ned says, is doing this rat-a-tat barrage of questions about his abilities. And Peter is just trying to ignore him and brush him off. And he is like nailing his sit-ups. He is like rapid fire doing sit-ups. And Hannibal Buress, as the coach, comes by and goes and compliments him on like, way to go, Parker. And Parker gives this look like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to be this badass at sit-ups.
And he starts to slow down.
That's a great moment.
Yeah. And so this is where Peter has one of his first interactions with Liz.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they're doing the Marry, Kill, F, yeah.
F, Marry, Kill.
Yeah.
Which I think we should end this episode with.
Oh, I was ready to do it
go
this
around
second.
The room. I think we should tease it so people can listen.
Yeah,
I think the answer is so damn obvious, guys, but okay. We'll hold it to the end.
All right. So let's talk about their how do you feel about with them not going with the choice of not going with your traditional Mary Jane character in Spider-Man: Homecoming and choosing to go with the Liz and then the actor who plays that character. How did you feel about
the actor who plays
Flash?
Liz?
Oh.
Flash that's fucking a boy from Grand Budapest and
I know. I kept calling him Zero in my head.
Well, Laura Harrier as Liz is great.
So let's talk about like the chemistry between them. It's feeling like for me, I really felt like that awkwardness felt genuine between them. It's really cute, their interplay and their attraction to each other. And Peter's, his awkwardness and trying to speak to her at least.
They eke out their connectivity slowly, which if you had told me this film was going to end with Peter and Liz going to homecoming dance together, I would have been like, that's not right. That doesn't feel honest or genuine at all.
Right.
But the way that John Watts makes that happen works.
Yeah.
And the fact that Liz is, she's all extracurricular. She is, so obsessed with making sure that she's going to get into the right schools and have the right life that she has pushed out any possibility of like a high school romance. Yeah. And Peter is like crazy adorably awestruck by her beauty and personality. That when they finally do have that hall pass moment after the trip to Washington D.C., you believe that she'd say yes to sure, let's go to the homecoming game. Yeah. And when she says yes, because you're watching a Spider-Man movie, he's going to F it all up because he has to.
Yeah. Now, this gym sequence that we just got through talking about sets up the fact that Liz is having a party at her parents' house, and she invites Peter and Ned. So Ned's idea is, you know what? This is what we should do to become cool. You go to that party, change into Spider-Man, you swing in, tell everybody, hey, I'm friends with Peter Parker. Where is he? I just wanted to say hi. Also, Ned's my dude, too. Give me a fist bump. And then everyone will think you're cool, and Liz will love you, and then we'll live happily ever after. Which, so let's go.
By the way, is a plot point that Superman and Clark Kent would do all the time to try to get Lois Lane. Never worked.
But it was Flash. I think that Flash's interaction with this is also really important because when they overheard the F, Marry, Kill, of the ladies, that's when Ned was like, Peter knows Spider-Man, which then got flashed in on the act, going like, I don't even think you have the Stark internship. I just think you're just in general like
BS,
full of shit.
Yeah.
So, and the way his character unfolds, I think, is just really fun and funny.
I like the little details too. I mean, I don't know if we've seen this in the previous Spider-Man movies, but just a simple fact that Aunt May has to drop them off at the party.
Yeah, of
like
course.
little things like that just solidifies.
And the fact that she's so into it.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, you're having this critical high school experience. My mom would not be like that.
Yeah. and she pushes him to go to that party because he's nervous. But that moment where she kind of like busts Ned's balls about his hat, but when he responds because as a genuine compliment from Aunt May, she backs off and reciprocates his enthusiasm for that hat.
I thought she meant that genuinely when she said it.
No, I don't know.
Really?
No. She was busting his balls.
Some guys wear hats, but some hats wear guys, but you're wearing that hat.
She's mom teasing that kid and chooses not to push further.
Really?
Yeah. Watch that scene again.
I've seen it like 4 times.
Watch it a 5th time, sir.
All right. So they go into this party, again, the plan is for Peter to change into Spider-Man, come in, introduce himself, and make Peter and Ned look cool.
Peter is having reservations.
He is. And while he's having reservations, he sees and hears an explosion off in the distance.
With an unearthly glow.
Yes. So obviously he has to go check that out. And this is Peter's first encounter with Shocker and Proto-Shocker. And also...
Donald Glover.
Donald Glover's trying to make a deal. He's trying to buy...
Playing the Prowler, Uncle to Miles Morales.
Which is awesome. And he has that great quote that Lisa used in the opening, which that made me laugh all 4 times I saw it. I love Donald Glover's performance in this moment.
He was really good.
But it's...
Have you seen his stand-up? He has a stand-up special on... Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, this interaction is important because Peter catches this deal in progress, and he... when he interrupts this deal, the Shocker thinks that Donald Glover's character has something to do with it, pulls a gun. Peter says, hey, if you're going to shoot someone, shoot me, diverting the attention, thus leading to this ensuing chase. That moment and Peter's bravery in that moment and his distraction of trying to save Donald Glover's character is something that would not be lost on that character. And there's a callback to that later on, which I thought was cool. And again, Peter being a good person and people noticing it. Like I said, the guy in the bodega shop, people in the neighborhood, Donald Glover's character noticing that, something good in this kid. Happy at the end of the film, Tony seeing it. And so it's a common thread that runs through that, Peter Parker is a good kid. Now, the important thing that happens plot-wise in this ensuing chase is that although the Shockers get away, a piece of that tech is dropped and found by Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And
Peter also devastates the neighborhood.
I know. I love the fact that, it just points out the fact that Spider-Man is an urban hero. He is absolutely useless in the suburbs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has stamina and he's kind of fast, but unless he's can sling some webs, he's not getting anywhere without breaking a bunch of shit.
Best joke in the entire movie.
The Bueller?
Oh, the Ferris Bueller.
No, it was the golf course.
Golf course.
Oh,
he whips the swing, whips to nothing,
and there's nothing.
And then he has to run across.
That sucks.
That was great.
Another point to establish that Peter Parker is just a good kid is that as he's running through a backyard, someone's dog sees him and runs up to him. And instead of running up to Peter to bite him and attack him like he's an intruder, that dog runs up to Peter to play with him.
Yay!
Did you notice that?
Yeah, it was so sweet.
It's and dogs can tell if you're a good person or if you're evil. They want to bite your nuts off. And that dog wanted to play with Peter. And I thought, for me, it just, he's a good kid. Even dogs think so. So yeah, he destroys that neighborhood, but he comes away with a piece of that alien technology that he shows to Ned the next day, and they try to examine it to find out what's going on, and this ultimately leads them to tracking the bad guys to DC. So they're supposed to school actually, and I like that how it's the movie's called Homecoming, and Peter's high school life just runs parallel to his quote unquote superhero exploits, in that it is almost always there. He's constantly having to go back and forth between both worlds. He has this action scene, this chase with these two bad guys. He meets the Vulture for the first time, and
he's dropped into a lake.
Yep, and you have that great scene with between he and Tony, or Tony's suit, one of the armors. But then it's right back to high school life. He's back at school now. When Peter's at school, he's still got a foot into the superhero life. His focus is not with school. He's constantly telling people, I got better things to do than be here or to think about college or school. I'm got bigger things going on than school. And so I like that, but I also like that the film constantly reminds us that it constantly takes us back to school to show us that, again, he's a 15-year-old.
Well, again, one of my favorite moments of the movie is when he's like, I'm too good for this. I don't need high school. I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. And then that's when Kenneth Choi steps in as Principal Morita and says, Parker, my place. Mm-hmm. And then, you get an opportunity to nudge, nudge, wink, wink. He's from the Howling Commandos, or his grandfather was one of the Howling Commandos.
I saw that picture on his
right. It's the same actor from First Avenger.
Yep.
Playing his grandson. And it's the Principal Morita telling him, look, while you're here, you got to be here.
Hmm?
Right, and it's something that's surely going to bite him in the ass in future films.
Yeah.
The fact that he's disregarding his schoolwork.
Yeah.
I mean, Captain America would not fucking approve.
No. And so they end up tracking the Shocker to Maryland, actually.
Shout out to Maryland.
Yeah, and and so Peter decides, okay, he and Ned, Peter's actually going to go with the science decathlete team to the competition, which takes place in D.C. While he's in D.C., he can sneak out and track the bad guys to their what he thinks is their evil lair.
Right. And I think it's important to point out at this point that he's trying to do this all unbeknownst to Tony Stark. So he started modifying and hacking his suit so he takes the tracker out, because he gets a phone call from Happy, and Happy's like,
what
are you doing?
Yeah.
What's up? And so he takes the tracker out of his suit, and then in doing so, Ned discovers the training wheels protocol, and so Peter insists that that's also taken off. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of flying without a parachute at this point.
Yeah.
So,
literally, because he lost his parachute in the lake, which comes up later.
That's right.
So we didn't talk about the suit, because this is when I guess, that happened more so at the party, at Liz's party, when he discovered all the different attributes that his suit can do. Because then when we get to D.C., when he gets to Maryland, he discovers all the different type of webs.
Well, that's at this point. This is when the training wheels protocol
is taken off.
Comes off. That's when we get Karen.
Which I
Congratulations.
love. I love that aspect of this particular suit, as it gives, I think it was one of my subsequent watches where I was like, well, I like Peter and I like Tom's performance. I like Peter when he's talking, and I like that Karen gives Peter someone to talk to when he's not with his friends.
At first, I was kind of like, oh, is this a little too much Iron Man?
Yeah, Jarvis.
I don't know. But because this is a pretty significant departure from the comic books, or at least where the character was at this point in his continuity. Mm-hmm. But what this allows, Tony Stark's, overdoing it of the Spider-Man suit allows them to give him, spider tracers, the spider light, the parachute, the Steve Ditko web wings. Using Tony Stark's ego and intelligence in designing the spider suit and Karen and all that allows for us to have the most comic booky Spider-Man we've ever had, and is able to pay homage to all those wonderful things. So I'm expecting in the next Spider-Man movie, we better get the spider buggy.
Does he have Spidey sense?
I
don't think he does.
He does in the MCU. It's just not been established yet cinematically on screen. But I like that one line that Aunt May says to him in the Thai place, like, Peter, you got to start using your instincts, which I thought I'm probably reaching, but I just thought that that's for her to say that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then they haven't established his spider, because there are several instances in this film where had he had spider sense, things would have went differently. But Kevin Feige has said that Peter does have them in the MCU. They just haven't been.
And I think that having Karen there and having the super wise suit kind of edges out Spidey sense.
It also allows for, this moment when he finds himself trapped inside damage control after his skirmish with the Vulture and the convoy. And it allows him to use Karen the way that Stark used Jarvis, and I guess how he'll use Friday as this psychiatrist moment, right? So he's able to tell Karen things that he can't even tell Ned about Liz. And then Karen later, when they're all together, when it's Karen, Peter, and Liz via the Spider-Man suit, she's able to say, like, okay, well, here's your opportunity, kiss her.
Tell her how you feel. Yeah. I love the joke of, like, he's going through all the protocols and learning about his suit, and then, he's lying in the hammock, and then he's like, now how long has it been? 37 minutes. Yeah. So funny. Yeah. I laughed every time. Yeah. So funny.
And so, meanwhile, while Peter is locked himself in this facility, the group has had the competition. They've been successful in the competition, thanks to Michelle coming in clutch with the correct answer. And now they're touring DC. And while they're touring DC, before Peter leaves to go off on his little mission, he tells Ned, keep an eye on the glowy thing. Keep it safe and secure.
There would be an Amber Alert out on him if he had been missing that long.
It is odd. Although, I mean, obviously Martin Starr is a terrible teacher, because this is apparently the second student he's lost.
That shit was so funny, that shot.
And yeah, that stretches the believability a little bit. But because you're having so much damn fun with this movie, you don't really care.
Yeah, there's so... Okay, here's something else that is like a plot hole, I guess, maybe. So when they're going to the competition, Peter hasn't shown up yet. Ned's waiting around in the room for him at the very last minute. And they're like, dude, come on, we're getting ready to leave. Ned's like, all right, fuck it, I'm coming. He grabs his stuff. He runs back in the room to grab the glowy thing. The glowy thing is burning a hole in the bed. Ned just grabs that shit like it's not hot, puts it in his back, in his pocket. And then it's several moments later, it's in his pocket, and it hasn't caught on fire yet. Then when it's in his book bag, it's catching on fire and it sets off. But like, he never treats it like it's hot or it's burning.
Extraordinarily slow burn.
Yeah, it only burns textile apparently. But I saw that like all 3 times, and I was like, okay, why is that not burning him? But
that's like you
just said, Brad. I was like, but you know what? I'm having too much fucking fun. So yeah, I literally didn't mind that. Like the fact that he was missing for so long, and like. Martin Starr was like, well, where the hell is Peter? Or no one gave him shit for it.
Martin Starr, terrible teacher.
I just didn't care.
And I just want to take this moment to, one of the successful elements of having a high school movie is having successful high school teacher characters. And I think Martin Starr pulls that off.
Great. He's
absolutely.
Kenneth Choi is the principal. Yeah. Hannibal Buress. Even the one line from the shop teacher kills it. Yep. Right? Like, kids, stop playing around with the saws, or whatever he says. Yeah. I mean, the adult presence or the lack of presence really works to aid the environment.
Mm-hmm. And so the issue or the setup of the sequence in DC is that while Peter is in the facility, he's going through boxes in the place where he's trapped at to try to find something to get him out. Pulls out Ultron's head, pulls some other devices out, but he finds a similar power core glowy thingy, and Karen tells him, "Oh, that's a Chitauri reactor. Like it's safe until it's weaponized if it comes into contact with radiation." And so, meanwhile, Ned has his glowy thing in his bag, and it's put through that X-ray scanner in the security check, which has radiation, and it weaponizes that device. And so now they're going up to the top of the Washington Monument.
And you know, if they're touring DC, that he went through like 20 of those.
Yeah, and so it's super weaponized now, and so now they have this sequence in the top of the Washington Monument, and I like this moment because we're also introduced to the Spider-Man's drone, which is pretty cool. But also, you know, the fact that we get to that moment that, you know, that's, if you really think about it, that's Peter's first real big, you know, outside of the, you know, Civil War stuff. That's his first real big, like, superhero-y save, as it's not, you know, someone, he's not returning a stolen bike or, you know, helping a lady across the street. Like, he's doing something like on a grand...
Or destroying a sandwich shop.
Yeah, but he's doing...
or the entire suburbs.
His whole heroic act is on a grander scale, and it's, you know, the news is there, and he does have that moment with Liz in the elevator where Karen tells him to kiss her. But that situation, though, Peter not being there up until the last minute, but coming as Spider-Man, has a very huge impact on him later in the third act of that film when he comes into contact with Toombs, when Peter meets Toombs for the first time. Mm-hmm. And so I like that. So that sequence wasn't just a sequence for the sake of like an action scene, but it does play a part in the story and how his character interacts with Toombs later on in the film. So then we come back from that, and May... You know, everyone.
We also had an interesting moment with Michelle. We've been kind of skipping over Michelle, but Michelle is another decathlete. But
Yep.
she's got a big time case of the not being a joiner. So you
Too
know,
cool for school.
she's, you know, she sits at Ned and Peter's lunch table, but she's not really sitting with them. You know, she's reading,
She's
and then
Ali Sheedy in Breakfast Club.
yeah, and so during that big save at the Washington Monument, she's on the ground because she's
It's a pretty great moment,
Yeah.
though, where she
Martin
tells
Starr.
Martin Starr, look, I'm not going in anything that was built by slaves. And he's like, Washington Monument wasn't built by slaves. And then the Washington Monument security guard's like,
All right, enjoy your book. But yeah, I really liked her character, and where they go with that character towards at the end of that film was something that I was wanting like earlier in the movie. Like I was like, I mean, Liz is cool or whatever, but like I like Michelle's quirkiness. Like,
you're a fan of She's All That.
I
don't even know who that is.
That's a movie from the 90s where the
No, I mean the actress who
Zendaya.
Yeah, I don't even know who that is.
She's a Disney.
Disney girl.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
But she's a super babe in real life.
Yeah, she's in The Greatest Showman. This with
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
The
crushing her
new-
because she's like 50. Is she an adult playing a teenager?
No, I think she's an actual teenager.
Okay, good.
Stop perving on her,
No, that's
Darren.
what I'm saying. Like I wasn't crushing her. I just liked her and her character. Like I just. Liked
I
her
like the
for
fact
Peter.
that they're saving her for another film.
Yes.
I love that she's getting the real Marvel treatment. She's being rolled out slow.
But they have subtle hints that.
Gross, Lisa.
Stop it.
So anyway, we haven't talked about Toombs yet. So there are several instances where we meet back up with him. The Tinkerer keeps referencing.
They never call him the Tinkerer in the
don't.
film.
They don't
just
even
call him Mason.
And they don't even call Toombs the Vulture in the film, which I love that fact.
Yeah.
So because Peter botched that pickup of the materials in that truck that Toombs was trying to steal to make more weapons to sell, the Tinkerer, the character that's playing the Tinkerer, he keeps periodically saying, "Hey, you know, Toombs, you want me to finish doing this special thing to this suit, the vacuum sealed protocol thing?" And Toombs is like, "No, man, I don't. Stop asking me that. I'm never going to do that." So we keep going back and forth with him. So we meet back up with Toombs, and because they don't have the necessary materials to continue making more weapons to sell, you know, he becomes desperate, and he says, "All right, well, you know, as a last resort, like let's do that.
So we can do the big one.
Let's do the big one that you were talking about."
I just want to take a break at this moment to say that I was going through IMDb as we were talking about the Tinkerer, and he's played by Michael Chernus. And you know where we've seen him before? He's in People, Places, Things, the Jermaine Clement film. He's the guy who sleeps with Jermaine Clement's wife.
That's so nice.
see people, places, things if you haven't seen it.
That movie's great. Okay, actually, before that, so Peter comes back from DC. He's still trying to find out. He knows that this Toombs guy is stealing from the damage control cache, right? And so he's like, all right, well, I have to do some more, snooping around to get some more information so I can find him. That leads us. He comes into contact with Donald Glover's character again, and so we have him in interrogation mode, which is a really funny exchange.
So good.
Funniest moment.
I'm not a girl, I'm a boy.
And so there's that moment where Donald Glover's character tells him, look, you obviously are new at this. You need to practice and get better. But he has that, first he has that why should I help you conscience, but then he says, well, you know what? I don't want these crazy weapons being sold in my neighborhood. I have a nephew who lives in the neighborhood, and that just made me so giddy. It just made me so giddy. But then he ultimately gives Peter some information. And again, you see that Peter is he still makes mistakes. He's still overzealous. He still misses details. And case in point, when Miles's uncle tells him, all right, I know where they're going to be, Peter gets excited and runs off. And he says, wait a minute, you don't even have a location. I haven't even told you where they're going to be yet. Oh, yeah. He comes back. And so and
the way he leads on the car.
Yeah. And so I like that exchange, not just because of the little Easter egg in there. But again, it still shows Peter's amateur nature, which will play a huge part in the next sequence, because he tells him there's going to be an exchange on this ferry at 11 o'clock today. And so this is the showcase scene of the film, and it's in the trailer of that action sequence on that New York ferry. And so do you want to talk about that, Brian or Brad, that whole sequence where Peter is spying on, the Shocker's there.
Well, this is when he first sees Toombs for the first time.
Right.
Yeah, so he encounters Toombs and Shocker having like a secretive conversation in the passenger side, and Shocker 2, Bokeem Woodbine, goes to meet with Matt Gargan, who's going to be the Scorpion.
Yes.
And they're going to, have money for goods deal. Mm-hmm. And, Spider-Man's going to stop that deal. Mm-hmm. And, like he did with the ATM robbery, he jumps in and he doesn't know what's happening or what's involved.
Yeah, I like when Tony Stark calls him right when he's like looking at the criminals, and you get his POV where he's trying to like look at the criminals, and you see Tony Stark like interrupting him. I thought that was
and cool. That the ferry horn goes off, and he's like, "What is that?" He's like, "Band."
There's a small bit of dialogue from Tony Stark that while this action sequence is about to take place, we're building up to it, and while this is a Peter Parker movie and a Peter Parker story, there's still with Robert Downey Jr. You can say what you want about is it time for Robert Downey Jr. to retire from this character, because he's like 15 features deep into the MCU. But one thing I love about that character is that, yes, there's an Iron Man 2, and then Civil War, and then Avengers, but like Tony Stark as a character has continually evolved. His character arc is still happening through all of the films. That moment that he says, look, my father never gave me praise. I'm trying to break the cycle of shame. Just that little line of dialogue and how he says it. It's equipped, and yes, it can be taken as humor, but that speaks to what Tony's aim is in not using him just for that one mission. I'm trying to mentor you. There's something greater at play here.
I think that's where for me, as far as in the MCU, just to kind of go off a little bit, I think that's what Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr., that's where his role is going to go, being more of a mentor moving forward. I mean, we're not going to get like an Iron Man 4. We're not going to get any of that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Riri Williams come in and be Iron Star. What was it?
Ironheart.
And still keep Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark moving forward, and him just kind of be a mentor,
in a chair
in the MCU. I mean, I could definitely see that happening.
It is really cool, the Tony Stark character arcs, because from something started to happen in Age of Ultron. His shine got tarnished, right? Ultron, and then what he's trying to do, what he's trying to correct in Civil War, and how that tarnishes that shine even a little bit further. And now you have an opportunity with Peter Parker to, take on the mentor role and to be the father figure.
Yeah.
And I think it is a relationship that doesn't occur really at all in the comic books and is truly born from the events of the MCU and makes Tony Stark a really interesting and exciting character going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you don't have to worry about, not saying you don't have to worry about it, but this many films deep, you go, well, where else can we take this character? Like, he's done he had that character arc in the first Iron Man, the events of that, what happened in that cave, transforming Tony.
The Avengers, which leads to the PTSD, and then the Iron Man
3. You got that story arc.
Ultimately goes to Age of Ultron. So he's had, which goes to Civil War. So his arc has been multifaceted throughout the whole universe. Throughout the whole universe.
And so that particular line of dialogue just did a montage in my mind of everything you just mentioned, and just seeing how Tony is perpetually growing. He's still growing as a person, and that's just exciting. And ultimately sad because he's gonna die soon.
No, we don't know this.
I'm telling you right now. I'm saying. So anyway, this sequence happens. So Lisa, this is an action sequence.
Yay!
Oh no!
But action. But it speaks to a character and a character's decisions, his motivations, and where he is at this point in his own arc. Talk about your response to this particular action sequence.
I mean, it was harrowing. Like, to see the situation just so utterly mishandled. He was
tits up.
He was completely out of his depth. And then to have the ferry split
and
down
the
the center.
FBI to be there already.
Right. And so the situation was going to be handled. So literally all he's there doing is making shit worse.
Yeah.
And he's literally trying to hold this ferry together with his own webs, and the fact that it looks like it works at first, and people are like, "Yay, Spider-Man! He saved the day!" And then to have that then fall apart is crushing and intensely humbling for Peter Parker, and then to then have Daddy come along and clean up your mess. Yeah. It's just, like, the whole situation is just so heartbreaking and humiliating.
You know what was the hardest part for me was when, as Iron Man's coming through, sealing the ship up, making everything right, when Peter's like, is there, just following behind him, is there anything I can do? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, it's just like, dude, I felt so bad. Yeah, I felt so bad.
If there was only an invisible button.
Yeah, but it leads to that great exchange.
Miles Morales
on the top.
Invisible. Sorry.
Yeah, but it leads to that great exchange on the top of that structure.
Right.
When Tony actually confronts Peter, and I thought that was. You want to talk about that?
Well, you know what's so great about that moment is Tony Stark sees so much of himself in Peter. And if you look at Homecoming and you look at Iron Man 1, they kind of have the same structure. And there's several parallels. And this moment where because this is when Tony Stark chastises Peter, as like when he says, if you're not anything without the suit, then you don't deserve the suit. That is how Tony Stark feels about himself.
Right.
He thinks, that he could do all this stuff without the armor. He doesn't need the armor. He prides himself on his brain. He prides himself in being able to storm the Mandarin's castle without the armor and save the day. And he wants Peter Parker to be just like him. And he wants Peter Parker to learn all the lessons that he's been trying to learn over the course of Iron Man 1, 2, 3, Age of Ultron, Civil, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And, I want to pick up that thread in the last scene.
All right. And so in this moment, because Stark is upset, he tells Peter, I made a mistake. Give me the suit back. And that's when you get that, that line of dialogue, please don't take the suit. It's all I have. I'm nothing without this suit.
Yeah.
If you're nothing without the suit, then
and he
you don't
tells
need
him,
it.
too, he's like, as a father figure, he's like, I want you to be better than me. So it speaks to that whole thing.
But like what I like so much about Tony Stark as a character within the MCU is he is not all knowing. Like he could have been helping this guy out a lot more. He could have been
Peter Parker.
He could have been helping Peter and mentoring Peter in a much more significant hands-on way.
Yeah.
And he is responsible for what happened in that ferry. He is responsible for what happened at Delmar's sandwich shop.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Stark should have, after Berlin, shepherded him in a more fatherly manner, which is what he's trying to do in the final scene of the movie, in which he's acknowledging what he should have done.
Okay.
Instead of dropping it off in Happy's lap, who Happy already has so much going on.
And that's what's so interesting about Tony Stark to me is all these flaws that he has.
Yeah. So after the suit is taken back, Peter says, all right, well, you know what? I'm just going to go back to high school life. I'm going to attempt to go back to high school life. It's on, I believe we're coming up on the eve of the actual homecoming dance. And so, because of, Peter skipping the science decathlete, he's put on detention. And it's while on detention, he's going for a bathroom break, I believe. That's when he bumps into Liz.
I love the detail of the enormous hall pass.
Yeah. And so that's when they have an exchange, and Peter apologizes, or I think something that Liz points out that he does too much or he does a lot. And that's when he builds up the nerve to ask her out to the homecoming dance, and she agrees. And so we have that montage of Peter seeking Aunt May's help to get ready for that.
I also think that he's a little bit relieved to have the suit and the weight of the Spider-Man responsibility lifted from him, because now he does have room in his life for homecoming dances, and he does have room to take this chance on Liz.
Just like Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire when he loses his power, only this is done better.
Wow. So he gets ready for homecoming, and he is dropped off by Aunt May to Liz's home to pick so that she can so they can go to the homecoming dance. So all 4 times that I saw this in the theater, this moment got the exact same response. And I loved it.
I did not see it.
Me neither.
Nobody did.
So the first time that I had the response you had, the second time I go back and I'm like, all right, let me look and see if there are things in there that clue you in, if there are any breadcrumbs. And what I love about John Watts' approach to this reveal is that no, there are not. There aren't any. Even if you look at that opening scene where Toombs is looking at that drawn picture of the events of Avengers, there's nothing in there leading you to believe that it's Liz. Liz never mentions anything about her father and what he does or it being Toombs. Like, at no point are there any, again, breadcrumbs laid to clue you into that reveal where you go, oh,
but at the same time, when you rewatch it, scenes play differently.
Exactly. You look at that
Yeah.
picture and you go, Liz drew that picture. He mentions several times that he's a family man. And so
he does. And but that was the thing, like, even when saying he's a family man,
he's never like, I have a daughter and she's in high school and she's very accomplished.
For me, this was a lot like the Mandarin reveal in Iron Man 3, where I did not see that coming. It's not at all in keeping with the comics, but it is so damn perfect.
That scene is great.
I mean, in Homecoming, when the door opens and you have that shock of the Vulture is Liz's dad, you also have an instant reaction of, that is perfect writing. Of course, that's how it's going to go.
And I don't know if this is true in the Spider-Man canon, but I know that a lot of times they try to tie in Spider-Man with his villains, like have almost like a personal connection.
This is 100% new to the
but I think they're able to do this in a new and fresh way. In tying Peter Parker and Toombs together in a personal way, but not have it be kind of like how we've seen it before in the Tobey Maguire
tying
film.
it to the high school film. So now we have the awkward exchange with your girlfriend's father, the chaperone, the drive to the dance, and like, you know, Peter knows that this dude's the vulture from the door opening, and it completely ruins his night, and it ruins Liz's night.
But it takes the car ride for Toombs to figure out.
And over the course of that car ride, as Toombs starts to realize it, when he sends Liz to, you know, go to the dance, we're going to have the dad talk.
Yeah,
and
that was
Michael
awesome.
Keaton killing it with the eyebrows, as per usual.
Yeah.
And he pulls the gun from the glove box, and you have this moment in the car. It's like...
It was great.
It's so brilliant.
There's
and
so much
perfectly
tension. From the time he rings that doorbell and that doorbell comes open till he steps out of that car, it's just so much tension.
Well, especially because even while you're going like, oh my God, that's the villain. Also, I'm going like, oh, he's fucking it up with Liz.
No,
he's embarrassing himself in front of the girl, and that's horrible. It feels awful.
Yeah, he took some shitty homecoming pictures.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that picture.
Yeah.
I love how the mom... I love how the mom is like, he's cute, even though he's acting like so weird.
Yeah.
Like it's clear that Toombs is utterly duplicitous, and his family life is great.
And Toombs, you know, the relationship he has with his wife, Liz's mom, where she comes to him and says, like, you get his name right? He's like, yeah, right, Freddie, right? And like,
They've
again,
got bits.
It's a bit that you see in high school movies. And that's, I mean, Homecoming is melding a whole bunch of stuff. It's melding, you know, the comics, but it's also melding all the John Hughes, you know, nostalgia perfectly. It's mining it perfectly.
So Peter, you know, there's the reveal that Toombs knows or recognizes Peter or finds out that Peter is actually Spider-Man, and he gives him that ultimatum, like, you can walk through those doors and act like forget any of this ever happened.
Because you saved my daughter.
Because you saved my daughter, so, you know, I'll give you this one opportunity to go through those doors, show my daughter a good time. Don't ever interfere with my business. If you do, I'll kill you and everyone you love. And he gets out of the car. Peter gets out of the car and walks into the homecoming dance, and he ultimately ends up standing Liz up, runs to go get his makeshift suit, and he heads straight to... Well, he leaves the back of that high school and he has a confrontation with the Shocker. Yeah, which is was an instance that he would have benefited from having spider sense because he got pounded. But it's a great moment because it allowed Ned to this is the beginning of him in his man in a chair transformation, because he ultimately saves Peter, allowing Peter to escape to go give chase to Toombs, and then Ned's going to go upstairs into the computer library and give assistance from his command terminal. And so Peter steals a car. He steals Flash's car.
Yay!
Which the license plate says Flash Drive on it. I thought that was funny.
I love the sweet Bronzino reference. I'm sorry about dinner. I didn't know, but I know when Bronzino's fresh, and that Bronzino was not fresh.
Yeah. And so...
he was so great.
Oh, my goodness.
Zero.
Yeah, he's great.
He has a real name. Let's look it up.
Tony Ravioli.
Oh, Tony Ravioli?
It's Rivoli.
Rivoli?
Yeah.
I like it the way Brian says it. It sounds magically delicious.
I thought it was Rivoli?
Yeah.
Revelori. Everybody's wrong.
Yeah,
Revelorio.
That's Revelori.
Zero.
Yeah.
Peter ends up at Toombs' one of his hideouts, and there's a great exchange there. That's when you have the exchange of, you know, Toombs seeing a similarity in he and Peter's status in life. You know, we're both the same. We're like the working class guys, and the people up top don't give a shit about us. And
give him the 99%er speech.
Yeah, and which is really just buying time. But I like that you know, that's how Toombs sees himself, because again, it goes back to what I was saying in the opening of this show, in that, you know, you have a relatable villain, or a villain that you can at least understand. And but he was just buying time for his second wingsuit to come through and save the day, to have the building come crashing down on top of Peter, which leads into my favorite character moment.
Yeah, that was awesome.
For Peter.
Yeah.
And so he's crushed under the weight of the rubble of this building, and this kid with superhuman powers who's been halfway across the globe, who's fought with the Avengers, is reduced to a teenager just screaming out for any adult to help. And he was scared. And I love that. Like, I love Tom Holland being able to, again, cement that this is, at the end of the day, like Ned said, you are a kid. You know? You could have died. Like, and I just love that moment.
And for the comic book fan, this is a perfect... Well, if not perfect, but it is a delightful rendition of Steve Ditko's Amazing Spider-Man 33 final chapter cover, and the scene in there where he's crushed, he's physically at his lowest, he is going to die, and he has to find it within himself. In the original 33 comic, it's this conversation with his dying Aunt May at the time, and his Uncle Ben talks to him. But in this movie, you hear the voice of
Tony
Stark, and he's able to mentally push his physicality and save himself. And it is chilling to watch on screen.
I love when he says, like, "Get up, Peter," and then he says, "Get up, Spider-Man." Yeah. Get up, Spider-Man. He just keeps saying it. Yeah. It's like he wills himself.
You got to believe in yourself.
That's a great moment.
And I just love that, just the visual of him, because yes, this is a 15-year-old. Yes, he's a kid, but he is so strong. There's a strength in him. And not just physical strength, but like emotional strength and psychological strength, but also the physical part. Like, this dude is strong. He's amazing. And it was just a badass.
And he lifted it like a building. He lifted an entire building.
And it was so awesome.
Yeah, it just goes back to what you were saying just about Peter Parker as a character being like this really heroic and humble and good person. Like, even in the scene after he gets out the car and he walks into the dance, and he tells Liz, like, look, I got to go. It goes back to what she was saying, like, that responsibility that he feels that he has. And for him, like, not just being Spider-Man, but if you look at him as a 15-year-old kid, to realize his own responsibility, that he has to do something, that says a lot about him as a character.
He also tells her, essentially, that she deserves better, and she deserves to be treated better, which I think is a tremendous... I think maybe it's the balance of his lack of self-esteem.
I mean, that's the melancholy beauty of the Spider-Man character, is he could have these other things, and he deserves those other things, but he can't have those things. That's the melodrama. That's the high schoolness again. The beauty of the character.
Yeah.
And so this leads to the final confrontation. So. In the film, this has been happening and talked about throughout the film. Avengers Tower is being cleared out. So at the end of Civil War, or it was Age of Ultron, where they established the new Avengers location upstate New York.
No, that's at the end of Civil War.
Yeah,
Age of Ultron. There's the new Avengers corridor. Yeah, that's how it ends.
Because they revisited Ant-Man.
Oh, that's right, Ant-Man. Okay. That's why I was trying to figure out the timeline where this take place.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so do we get to see that they're clearing out Avengers Tower to complete moving stuff into that new facility.
Okay.
And so
it's chronologically after Civil War.
Huh?
Okay. All right. I'm still trying to figure, because they moved in prior to. So does this movie take place?
But this is so. At the end of Age of Ultron, after the attack of Ultron on the tower, they have a new Avengers facility.
Okay.
And then that's when you have Ant-Man. And this film is after Civil War, but they are finally emptying out everything. Tony Stark has sold the entire Stark Tower.
Okay, so this already been there in upstate New York. They're just moving everything out from town. Okay.
Right, they're completely shutting it down.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so they have this huge. This is another thing that I could nitpick on. That huge friggin' Hercules like C5 airplane on the patio of the top of Avengers Tower. Physics wise, that is just not
the platform that the ship is on has some repulsor lifts like Iron Man's suit. You don't see them. You don't get that shot underneath.
They got some vibranium from
and the vibranium beams.
Hold on. I've already told myself this because I love this movie so much. I was like, you know what? There's something in there. Tony figured that shit out. Otherwise, that building should have tipped over a lot.
There's some like great like geeky things going on there too, where they talk about like the prototype for Cap's new shield,
Thor's
magic belt, which is Mjolnir. Basically, it's a magic belt that Thor wears that gives him extra strength.
Yeah.
He needs extra strength?
When you're fucking fighting the Destroyer, you do.
All right.
Those frost giants get pretty big, Brian.
Okay.
And so there's this final sequence with so what's going to happen is that one thing that the Tinkerer has been bugging Toomes about implementing the whole movie basically is regarding the hijacking of some more materials from this plane that's in transit to the new Avengers location. So they're gonna fly up to it, cut a hole in it, and steal some stuff out so they can have some more materials to craft new weaponry. And so basically, this is the final action sequence set piece of the film, and it leads to that plane crashing, and then it leads to a confrontation between Toomes and Peter that did not go and end how I expected, but I loved. So it did. The film did not end with Peter delivering a final crushing blow to the bad guy, either killing him or disabling him. Toomes was ultimately brought down by himself, by his own greed and lack of willingness to either listen to Peter or just cut his losses. Peter told him, your wings are damaged, dude. You have to let that payload go. Stop. Your wings are about to blow up. They're going to explode. But Toomes was just so set in his ways to retrieving this stuff to sell to quote unquote take care of his family, do this for his family, that it ultimately caused his jetpack to give out and come crashing down in a ball of fire. And Peter walks over to that ball of fire, picks him up out of it, and pulls Toomes to the side, and webs him up so that the authorities can come take him away. And so, again, I like that it didn't end with Peter having a knockdown, drag out brawl with the final bad guy,
a Disney death,
as it has in the previous Spider-Man films. As far as like you look at like the Defoe's battle with Tobey Maguire at the end of
Doc Ock
as well. It wasn't like that, but also it showed character growth for Peter in that he let the authorities come and finish and do their job as well. And so I really thought that was a cool and unique choice in a film that, regarding Spider-Man and the fact that we've seen him cinematically so many different times, they did so many different things to differentiate this particular Spider-Man and Peter Parker. What were your thoughts on their decision to go that way with the final confrontation between Peter and Toomes?
I mean, I thought it was beautiful, and I thought it was the only way that their battle could end, because Spider-Man is not ready to let someone die.
Yeah.
Even if it's by their own mistakes.
Yeah.
Peter is a hero, and Peter, and I also like the move of, in terms of letting the authorities take over, the fact that he left a note. I think also showed that he was still a little bit embarrassed of his previous behavior, and he still was dealing with some shame.
It's a total
and some
Spidey
humility.
Move.
Yeah.
I mean, what I have appreciated about a bunch of the Marvel movies is that they understand the comic book nature, that when you have a good villain, you want to keep that villain, right? You don't want to kill Loki. You've got something great here. And over the course of Spider-Man Homecoming, Michael Keaton's Vulture rises to the top of one of their best villains, and you do not want to kill Michael Keaton's Vulture at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. No. You want to cultivate that into something else in the sequel. And I mean, if you had told me that by the end of this movie, I'd be ecstatic to see what the next level of villainy we were going to get from the Vulture, I would have told you were crazy. Yeah. But, we haven't even talked about his suit.
Okay.
I mean, it's amazing.
It's my favorite.
Wonderful update of the costume.
Oh, my God. It's my favorite looking Marvel villain, MCU villain. That, I'm just going to say it. You have to understand, that Sideshow collectible Hot Toys of the Vulture when it comes out is going to be dope as shit, and I'm going to have it. It is just a badass design.
Like the wings design is super cool.
Both versions of it.
But his aviator helmet and how that operates, and frankly, his jacket. And with the vulture neck, the fur. Oh my God.
It all makes sense. It all makes sense the way it's used up.
And I love how they led up to it with the Tinkerer and showing that Tinkerer was always working on different elements of this idea.
Mm-hmm.
I
love that suit design. It's weird. Like most of the time when a new MCU movie comes out, like that Tuesday before it releases, the Art of book normally gets delivered to me and shipped to me. But for whatever reason, the Art of Spider-Man: Homecoming is coming out after the release of the film. So I think Tuesday it gets delivered. Like the thing I'm most excited about is looking at the concept photos and the designs for the creation of the Vulture's
because I cannot reiterate how lame the original Vulture. Like Brad was showing me the original first appearance of Vulture, and he's wearing essentially what looks like a slinky gown with wings. Like it looks like he's wearing like a dress. He's
pretty dope.
With a fur collar and wings. And
I've always hated the Vulture in the
comics.
He's
got this withered, bald head. It's just really pathetic.
Yeah. I saw it at the Alamo last night. Their pre-show was a bunch of the old school Spider-Man cartoons.
Awkward.
And several of them were episodes that featured the Vulture. Oof. And it was a character design that was extremely bad. That was really bad.
Well, and also the Vulture is generally pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
Like the Vulture's plans are generally foiled by a better villain.
Well, like the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery, I would put next to. I would not necessarily raise it above the Batman Rogues Gallery, but he has a great group of villains and personalities. The Vulture he's at the bottom.
Lower tier.
Yeah, I mean the Vulture and the Rhino I'd kind of put together.
Well, the Vulture was until
this movie.
Michael Keaton and John Watts. Yeah, it's great. So let's talk about. So after that, we go back to the high school. We see the fallout from Liz's realization that her father is in fact a criminal, forcing her and her mom to pick up and move to Seattle, Portland, Oregon, because the Toombs does not want them present for the trial.
Right, because these two parts of his life have been completely separate.
Yeah, and so he has. Liz and everyone at the school have to say goodbye, and so there's that moment, their final moment together in this school. What did you think about that between them?
I mean, I thought it was appropriately sad.
Yeah,
and inevitable.
Yeah,
right.
And so we get Martin Starr. We see him again. He's congratulating the group. Once again for winning the Science Decathlete. He appoints Michelle as the next year's team captain.
Yes.
And then we have a pretty cool line of dialogue from her, which every time I saw the film got a surprised response. She says, my friends call me MJ. And so I immediately thought, well, that's weird. Like, how are they doing that? And
she's all that.
Is Michelle her middle name or whatever? Is Mary her middle name? What turns out that her first name is Michelle. Her last name is something that begins with a J. That's just the MCU's way of incorporating a Mary Jane character. So I don't think they're going to go with a Mary Jane in the MCU.
I think, I don't know.
That's what
I feel like
Feige
they could
said.
still call her Mary. I don't know.
Like
there are a lot of ways to not call her Michelle.
They barely call her Michelle in the movie.
Yeah. But when she says that, I got immediately happy because it meant that, for me, I think it just means that her and Peter are going to be together, and
which is adorable.
That's what I wanted, from the beginning. So I was like, yay! So we have another moment where Peter he sees Happy in the bathroom. Happy says, meet me, sends him a text, meet me in the restroom, and there's a moment where Happy's about to, spill his guts to Peter, and then a kid who walks out of the stall.
That chess club kid.
It kills every time in the theater.
He has two scenes and he's perfect in both of them.
Yeah, he kills every time. So basically he says, Peter, Tony wants to see you. He wants you to come upstate. So Peter's invited to the new Avengers headquarters. So we're taken there, and Tony says, look, you know what? Good job, kid. That was tough love back there when I took the suit from you, and I did it because I felt like that would be the motivating factor, and you came through, you pulled it off. So I got a group of reporters on the other side of that wall. We're gonna have a press conference, and I'm gonna show you this new suit. So he hits the button, wall turns around, freaking Iron Spider, and then he says, "We're gonna announce you as the new member of the Avengers. What do you think?" And so Peter says, "You know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm going to stay and be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." And it's him having that realization, something that you mentioned earlier, Lisa, that to not do this, to take that suit, would be to put myself out of my depth again, and I'm not ready. And I think for someone like Peter to have that honest moment and realization and admission to himself is another part of a huge arc for him as a character. And so I was sad because I just wanted him to put the suit on and go out there and tell the world I'm the new Avenger. But I really liked that and what that meant for that character.
I also like was that a test? I love that moment too.
Yeah.
While I feel like this scene fits well within the story structure that they are committed to, I don't necessarily love that final interaction between Stark and Peter.
Yeah, it's something about it because it harkens back to the first Iron Man
which
movie.
I like.
Yeah, with him admitting, revealing that he's Iron Man.
And we do get that Iron Man moment in this film.
You do, but the thing is, I don't like the fact of him going out because he still has to protect his identity because of...
I feel it's weird that Tony Stark has this press conference. I am going... There's just something clunky about that exchange. And then Pepper coming forward.
That's why when we said it was a test, there's really no reporters over there. But then when we see Pepper and there really was reporters.
It's another jokey moment. But then you're like, okay, so he was going to come out and announce?
Yeah.
That just seems odd.
Because I don't feel like any of the other Avengers had coming out parties. We were and the newest Avenger is Ant-Man,
Yeah, it didn't quite work for me. I don't hate it.
No.
But there was just something clunky.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that.
That didn't work.
Yeah.
But I like character-wise where that leaves Peter Parker, and I think it is important that he doesn't then move into Avengers Tower or however that would have, or New Avengers Mansion. And then the final scene where he comes back to Aunt May to the apartment and he takes his mask off and Aunt May's behind him.
What the fuck?
And that is the I Am Iron Man ending of the 2008 film.
Yeah. Because basically that's the reason he wants to keep his identity is really just from Aunt May. He wants to try to protect. So when she finds out,
And I'm really excited to see how that plays out.
Me too. I'm interested to see how that plays out. And
she kind of has to find out. She kind of has to find out.
Because honestly, the prolonged I have to hide my identity from X is something that we have seen so many times. And that's why at the end of Iron Man, when he was like, I am Iron Man, you're like, oh, thank God, we don't have to have that plot point. And now we can get it out of the bag for Aunt May, and we can develop Marissa Tomei's character in a new and exciting way. And
and plus, it's not fun to watch someone be dicked around for a whole nother film.
And
poor Lois Lane.
And even Kevin Feige said in the MCU, they don't want to have to deal with secret identities. So I think this is, and I thought about that watching this movie. I was like, wow, Peter Parker is the first character in the actual MCU proper, outside of Daredevil on Netflix, that he has a secret identity. And
I still think that his secret identity should be somewhat maintained because of his age.
Yeah.
I don't think that he can go full Iron Man, or I hope that he doesn't.
I don't think he is, and I don't think.
I think it's just to the people close to him.
Yeah, that press conference would have been him in that suit. It would have said, Peter Parker is a new new Spider-Man. But I think that Aunt May had to find out because, and this is one of the things that I was thinking about in the film, not even regarding his identity, but especially towards the end, and especially towards the reveal of that suit was, I'm almost scared and stressed out and worried for Peter Parker with the impending Infinity War because shit is going to get really bad it is going to get really bad before the following film. Like by the end of Infinity War, like bad things are going to happen regarding a bunch of characters that we care about. And with Peter being a 15-year-old kid who's saying, I'm not even feeling like jumping into this Avengers level stuff and dealing with like the Berlin stuff. I'm going to hang back and be a neighborhood Spider-Man. Now he's going to have to deal with not the neighborhood at stake or the world at stake, but friggin' reality at stake with the impending coming of Thanos and what
it'll
that
be interesting
means.
to see how he's incorporated into the cosmic story.
And so I think but the reason why I said Aunt May has to know now, because again, he's going to play a part in Infinity War. And so, you know, how's all this crazy shit going to be going on in Aunt May? It's like, I guess Peter's still at school, or hopefully he's hired and, you know, safe in a bunker somewhere.
I mean, I guess we can take a few moments here just to talk about what do we want to see from the Tom Holland Spider-Man in the next film.
I don't know.
I mean, it's hard to answer without knowing what Infinity War is, certainly, and what his role in Infinity War is going to be.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that the Vulture's still around, right?
Let's talk about the Stinger first.
Well, the Stinger is the Vulture's in prison. Mm-hmm. The Scorpion comes up to him, Matt Gargan, and he's got this crazy little spine thing on the side that you can barely see.
He has pins.
Yeah, it's so gross.
He threatened. Well, he says, like, you know, I hear a rumor that you know who, you know, the Spider-Man is, and the Vulture says, well, if I knew who he was, he'd be dead already, right? And then there's that Michael Keaton wink and a smile, a gleam in his eye. And so, you know, that Stinger sets up the fact that the Vulture is going to stick around and be an even more severe threat for Spider-Man. And it's establishing the Vulture as a Green Goblin level villain. And so in the second film, I want to see that Vulture story expounded upon. I don't necessarily want to see a whole bunch of other dudes get introduced. You know, let's bring in
the
Rhino, and let's bring in
Kraven.
Let's do Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn. I do want to see the Green Goblin told properly for once.
That would be cool.
But
dude,
but not the next film.
You see that video of that practical effect?
I've seen. Yeah, I've known about that.
That's amazing.
It's a great.
That is amazing.
But John Watts said, I read an interview about that Stinger. It's like this was his way of kind of making Toombs a little bit redeemable, but it was his way of really saying thank you to Peter Parker for not, for not giving away his identity and saving his life. So he's not going to give his identity away to this other guy. That's his way of.
I mean, if a villain would never give away that information. You don't have that level of information. Just give that off. You need to hold on to that. It's interesting to hear John Watts say that. I don't read that scene that way. And if that is how it plays out, if suddenly the Vulture and Spider-Man are like buddy-buddy, I don't like that at all.
I don't think he's going to be buddy-buddy, but I just think just the simple fact that he saved his life, that's his way of repaying it to him.
That's what I felt.
I
felt like
definitely don't read it that way.
I see how it could be, and that might be how it is, and I might be reading it wrong, but each time I went back and watched it, because the first time I watched it, I was like, what is that supposed to mean? So I made an effort each time to go back and watch it to try to see what was John Watts really trying to say there, what was Toombs really trying to say. And each time it felt like, while I could understand him saying, you know what, I'm not going to tell you what Peter is because I want to go kill him myself. I could see that, but I felt like
that information is worth something.
It is, but for some reason it felt like he genuinely was not going to give Peter up. Not because he was buddy-buddy with him, because he didn't want anything to happen. He just wanted to I'll let that go. If I get out of here and something changes and I want to become a bad guy again or whatever and I get back to him, okay, fine. But in that moment, I felt that was genuine.
It's interesting. I'll have to watch it again. I never felt that way. It's interesting hearing John Watts say that, because that would be profoundly disappointing to me.
But see, I think it's going to go the way you're saying it, but I don't think that's where it is right now.
You think him not telling the Scorpion is coming from a good place?
I do, because one, he loves his family so much. They made a point to say, Toombs, your family's here to see you. So, again, they're tying
that. But those two things don't necessarily connect.
If he kills Peter, he knows his daughter likes that dude, first of all. Secondly, he said it earlier, you and I are the same. He sees a bit of himself in Peter, I think.
I don't
really
know if he's necessarily going to come out and murder the dude, but I think there's still antagonism there, and I think Toombs is pissed off based on how I read that scene.
Also, I think Toombs is an opportunist, so like Brad was saying, there's money in knowing who Peter Parker is, and there's an advantage. And I mean, that's
a huge card. That's, the Joker knows who Batman is. Joker ain't going to tell anybody.
Yeah. So.
But that's what I want to see. I want to see more of Michael Keaton's The Vulture. I don't necessarily want to see, Sandman step up or Hydra Man or whoever.
Yeah.
Although the Sandman, Hydra Man, Mudman combo movie would be pretty great.
I guess from Spider-Man for a sequel, like I'm not even thinking as far as like villains. I just want to see Tom Hardy continue to be Peter Parker in the way that he's being Peter Parker. Because, again, all 4 times I've seen the film, that was the biggest joy for me, was just his portrayal of that Peter Parker. It is one of those things where you look at it and we go, how many different iterations of Spider-Man are we deep into now? Is this the third one?
Cinematic one.
Third one. But you look at how many Spider-Man films there have been, and you're watching this one and you go, the first time I was watching this one, I go, how fucking hard? How hard was that? Like, how hard was that to just do this, do Peter like this, and do the respect the character, and do the villain like this, and do the high school setting and the tone. Like, how hard was that? It was one of those things where it was like, man, they made it look so easy. Mm-hmm. They made it look so easy, but it's such an enjoyable and fun film.
The stuff I'm looking forward to is the high school stuff. Yeah. I'm looking forward to him and Michelle and their relationship unfolding. I'm looking forward to the introduction of Gwen Stacy and the introduction of Harry Osborn and how they play in. But also part of me is going like, I've given my heart to Peter Parker before, and he's, how many films is Peter Parker really going to get? He's a ticking time bomb of tragedy, especially when we know that Donald Glover has a nephew waiting in the wings. Yeah. I don't know.
I think that would be great. And, maybe we'll get Miles sooner than I believe. I just feel like that's off. We're way off. Especially since we're getting like an animated Miles Morales movie in December of next year. Yeah. It's weird.
What I would like to see ultimately down the line, not necessarily in the next Spider-Man film, is a continuation of this Tony being a mentor to Peter, then Peter eventually, hopefully Tom Holland is allowed to grow into that role, because that'd be awesome. So when you do introduce Miles, have it be like in the comic where like Peter is sort of a...
Actually, no, Peter dies.
Oh, Lord.
Well,
that's where Miles
and then he comes
from.
Back again.
He comes back from another universe.
Right, that's what I mean. But
parallel universe.
But like how Marvel takes certain things from the comics. And
I'd be like... floored if they killed Peter Parker. That'd be just insane to me. No. It could be great, but I just don't see it happening. If you give Spider-Man to Brad Gullickson, what I would do is I would come back to the Vulture storyline. I would go back to Donald Glover, Aaron Davis. I would build his character of the Prowler up. I'd bring Bokeem Woodbine back as the Shocker. I'd give him the goddamn yellow suit. That's right. The one straight from the comic books, and Vulture it up, sure, the way that they did with this film. Yeah. You can make a really badass costume out of the Shocker design. And I just feel like there's so much in this film of quality, tiny little pieces. I'd bring Principal Morita back, more Kenneth Choi. More Martin Starr.
More Hannibal
Buress. There's just so much here to concentrate on without muddying it up with bringing in all these other things that we've seen explored in lesser versions already.
Most importantly, bring John Watts back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's coming back for the sequel.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for our review cast for Spider-Man Homecoming. If you have not seen the film, go see it. If you've seen the film, go see it again. This movie is so rich in content and context. There's a lot there for the viewer. And again, at the end of the day, it is just really fun. Tom Holland knocks it out of the park as Peter Parker. Marvel MCU has knocked it out of the park with Spider-Man Homecoming. So, you can follow the podcast at ItModcast on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. Not Letterboxd. just other ones. And you can follow, you can let us know on social media what you thought of the film. We can continue the conversation. And you can follow Brian William Young at The Turtle Dork on Twitter, at The Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. Wife Dork is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter and Instagram, and Letterboxd. Brad Gullickson is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. And I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, on all social medias. That's going to do it for us. Be on the lookout for our Comic-Con, Fistful of Comic-Con, top 5 Comic-Con moments. Check out our Trespass cast with special guest Rap Dork Physics. And some more Comic-Con goodness once we get over to the West Coast. It's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. And until next time.